G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here with the dag end of the Outsiders talking about what else? The Paris attacks.
Scourge of violent extremist groups from the face of the earth. And make no mistake, that resolve has only grown stronger in the wake of this unspeakable brutality.
Alan Fanning, I mean, wiping from the face of the earth, it's not conciliatory language by any stretch.
Oh, it isn't it? And we've had this since 9/11, haven't we? This kind of cycle of language, and what comes out of it in, the northern suburbs of Paris, I suppose, among people, some young people who've come out of university, or some young people who've been sitting in the Middle East learning in madrasas or wherever, across the board, this sense of, as a young Muslim man or woman, I am humiliated, right? I have this massive grudge. I am a victim. And it's a worldview that Georgina's talking about trying to tap into, but it's a worldview that denies these people, their dignity. It is a deficit model of how to see the world, and it is the model that that Daesh plays on, right? And it's critical to it, and you've described the catch-22 perfectly. It is reinforced by comments like we've just heard from John Kerry. But what's the alternative?
Yes.
You know?
What is the alternative, Eric? I mean, there has to be a strong response. The governments of the West have to respond to this resolutely and with fairly serious intent.
And yet the view of most military strategists who've written on this is that we will not be able to wipe Daesh from the face of the earth.
We're wrestling with smoke.
Yes, this is not a problem you can kill your way out of, and it's always strange when the rhetoric of leaders suggests that they intend to do something that is impossible, and that seems to be what Kerry is saying there. The default position here is to say we'll have more bombs and we'll win, and that's just there is no one advising major militaries in the world who thinks that that's the case.
Perhaps it's the greatest test for the West, Georgina, is to set aside that clear temptation, is to say, this is us, this is what we are, and use that perhaps as our attack, as our shield, rather than weaponry, rather than as more slaughter.
I just don't think that's practical. I mean, we should always be true to our values. They are Western values are what has built our economy, have built our civilization. It's an extremely important fundamental part of Australia, part of the United States, part of Britain, part of who we are. But a military solution will have to be part of this. Absolutely, we will need to bring peace back to Syria. We will need to stabilize parts of Iraq that have been taken over by IS. I mean, that's military strategists agree that will have to be part of the problem. Picking off those targets, bringing back some sort of peace and calm to that region, creating an environment so that these refugees can return to their countries and start a democratic process there.
These attacks, Alan Fanning, just as a final point on the eve of the G20, it frames the possibility of serious escalation of conflict if that resolve is there within the G20 government's meeting in these next days.
Yes, it'll be fascinating to see what that organisation comes up with, and what is the tone of it, and also what is the suite of measures that they look to, whether it's the sword and the shield, or whether or not there are other elements to what they propose. Georgina talks about Western values, and a key question for our age is, are these universal values? Do we hold these truths to be self-evident? Do we propose to say to China that these are universal values?
I mean, they're not universal values. I think we can agree on that. I mean, quite clearly, IS doesn't ascribe to these values, and there are certainly plenty of parts of the world that don't. But this is fundamentally a battle of civilizations.
We shall have to watch and see how that unfolds. This is, I would have thought, hardly the end of that particular battle. Thanks to participants this morning, Eric Jensen, Georgina Downer and Ellen Fanning. This is Sunday Extra here on RN. Sepul Shinelmish, the senior producer, Claudette Burden.
Well, yeah. Pretty much at the time Paris was being attacked by two teams of a total of 7 people, my kids and I and my son's girlfriend were in a car driving through thunderstorms to get to Armidale, and we spent the whole day watching the storms go around us and go somewhere else and leave us alone and give us enough clear sky for the air show to proceed. Finally, in the finish, 1 minute after the last aeroplane landed, the heavens opened up, 3,000 people standing in a line waiting for a bus to get back to the car park, which was back in town, because finally Armidale has learned that if you allow people to try and turn right against the northward flow of traffic on the New England Highway as the airshow attendees try to get into the airport, if you let them do that from 8 o'clock in the morning, by 10 o'clock in the morning, the traffic has backed up to the northern outskirts of Armidale, right through the town. The whole place is in gridlock. So this time we drove to a car park. Everybody arrived at the car park and was bussed to the airport. So there was only the occasional bus cutting across the highway. But it meant that all the chaos and confusion which used to happen on the highway and throughout the town was confined to that one paddock when everybody got rained on and the buses in fleets of 10 carrying 800 people at a time descended on the car park, and everybody tried to get out through the same gate the new buses were coming in through. So it wasn't until we were sitting in my son's car in a complete gridlock in a grass paddock being rained on that somebody got on Facebook to see what was happening in the rest of the world, and we heard about this event in Paris. I noticed that nobody has yet apparently suggested that perhaps, considering that Tunisia and Algeria and Libya and Egypt and Syria and Jordan have all at various times been under French occupation, and the Algerians and the French fought a fairly bitter war over independence when the Algerians didn't want to be part of the great French Empire. Syria was a French protectorate or holding territory, colony, whatever it was, after the First World War, and it was given back to them after the Second World War, and then they gave it away again, more or less kind of sort of thing. But ex-colonial powers, they maintain puppet strings into their ex-colonies, commercial puppet strings, business networks. So it is entirely possible that the disaffected people in that part of the world, they happen to be Muslim, they happen to come from an ex-French colony. If life's hopeless and miserable for them from whatever cause, let's just say in Syria, the 11 years of drought caused by global warming, which precipitated the violent end of the rebellion against Bashar al-Assad. You can sort of follow the pseudo logic, the dot connecting that's going to go on as these people say, oh, it's all the fault of the French. If the French hadn't come here, everything would be fine. It's a little bit like the Aboriginal view that if only La Perouse had come back to Australia and sold a boatload of guns to the Aborigines around, Brisbane, then we never would have had a problem with the English. We probably wouldn't have had much of a problem with the French either after the Aborigines figured out how to use the guns. There's a long-running groundswell of opinion-feeling tradition in colonised countries that if only the colonisers had never showed up, life would be a whole lot better. So maybe these people have gone and picked on Paris because it was the French who pissed them off. I don't know. I find it really, really depressing to hear that Malcolm turning bull, Mal Gollum, turning bull, the allegedly great differentiator from Abbott, whereas Abbott called ISIL a death cult because they're anti-God. Malgollum, he says, oh, well, you know, it's the work of the devil. Yeah, the devil work, devil, Satan, devil, Satan. So there's not a great deal of difference there. And whereas Tony Abbott's theory was that we just have to dig more coal and burn more coal and dig more iron ore and smelt more steel and make the economy grow and rise and grow and get bigger and make more profits, what does Malgollum Turning Bull have to say? ISIL is the work of the devil, and we have to get the economy growing to make the jobs, to make more prosperity, and then they'll all be happy. And the Americans, they just want to, oh, we're going to go to war. And the French want to go to war. Of course they want to go to war. They've just had 370 casualties in their capital city. And the people who want to go to war haven't figured out yet that it takes 37 policemen to put permanent surveillance on one disgruntled adolescent. There aren't enough policemen to surveil every disgruntled adolescent. The decision to have an utterly self-destructive, violent temper tantrum, create as much murder and mayhem as possible, and then kill yourself afterwards, it's not something that you can legislatively remove from a human being living in a world that has anything as complicated as a fucking brick, let alone a bread knife. Instead of saying, oh, well, they're bad because they killed Westerners, therefore Westerners are okay to go out there and use all that high technology to sit on top of the gravity well and drop fire and death on strangers who live among bloody sand dunes on the other side of the world from where the stranger in the jet plane happens to live. No, that's crap. Where this will finally reach its end point is when every human who lives on planet Earth comes to the conclusion that they don't have the right to kill anybody else or beat and ill-treat them over a difference of opinion. If somebody else thinks a whole lot of horse shit, okay, let them go and think it, and their life will turn into horse shit because that's how they see the world. I don't have to go and teach them that horse shit is not good for eating. I don't have to teach them that pig dung is not good to rub on your boots. If they think that it is good, let them do it. Let them get even with themselves with the errors of their own ways. I mean, you know, the sins of the parents are visited onto the offspring, even unto the 7th generation. That's why if your great-great-grandfather puts all the topsoil at the bottom of the ocean, like happened around here in the 1860s when we lost 3 feet of it from here, that's why I'm condemned to try and figure out how to grow food in basalt rocks and clay subsoil. The sins of the parents visited onto the offspring. And I'm only about 3 generations down the track, so it'll continue to ripple for a while. It's a self-righting system, but it runs on free will. And if you think that it's okay for you to shoot at somebody because you're scared of them, then guess what? It's equally okay for them to shoot at you because they are scared of you. If your ancestors monstered their ancestors, you might have to explain to them why you're not actually the horrible person they've been raised to believe that you are. And colonial Europe raised a lot of places to believe that colonial Europe is a nest of fucking assholes who need to be fucked with a barbed wire dildo. I don't see it that way, but I can really understand why people who do see it that way think like that. Oh, the natives are restless, Javes. Go and get the Gatling gun, will you? When all is said and all is done, it matters not, for we have got the Maxim gun, and they have not, said Rudyard Kipling, of the Zulu Wars or something. No, it wasn't the Zulu Wars. It was a later one. Yeah, mafficking. Dear, oh dear, running out of time. I'm going to get back to uploading more videos taken at the air show. I've got another 12 short videos to go, taken on what's normally my communications phone, which has horrible touch phone camera controls on the screen on the back of it. But when the number one phone's battery went flat, that was all I had to go on. And yeah, I kept filming until the very end of the day. It didn't start raining until 1 minute after the last aeroplane arrived. And yeah, everybody should just put their guns down, use them, melt them down, use them for sailboat anchors. The answer is to stop killing people. The answer is to cooperate to communicate, cuddle your babies, you know, peace, love, brown rice and alfalfa sprouts. That's what works. That's what's been proven to work. Affiliative fraternity. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.